Just wanted to provide a quick update on the Arachnid Gokart. The previous back end is right here. I ended up rebuilding it. I didn't want to cut this one apart and then try to re-weld everything. I thought that'd just be a waste of time, and it was just easier to rebuild it. The reason why we had to rebuild it was two problems. First of all, if you notice right here and right here, we had our bearings for the live axle, 1.5 inch live axle, aluminum on the back. We found out that for the weight of this particular cart, we should probably have more bearings to distribute the weight on. So we doubled the bearings up, needed to double them up. And then from this point here out to the wheel, which was probably about a foot, and from this point out to the wheel here, we ended up bending the live axle a little bit and ended up getting a wobble in the cart. So there was that problem we had to take care of. And then finally, the torque converter we had on it, which I believe was a 30 series before, was too small for this engine. And so I needed to add a live axle. So I ended up rebuilding this thing and tried to take care of multiple problems. So here's the new rear end on this thing, and you can see here and here are the bearings like we saw on the other one, except then I built these wings out on this side and then set another set of bearings here closer to the outside of the wheels. I think we're about 2 inches away from the wheel there, maybe. That might be generous, 1.5 inches to 1.75 inches. So anyway, that accomplishes two things. First of all, we are distributing the weight of the cart across more bearings. And the second thing is we don't have this point from here out to the outside edge of the wheel is a large amount of leverage to try to bend that axle. Well, since we shorten that, hopefully we aren't going to bend the axle again. This is the same axle I had before, but I ended up straightening it on my press to as much as I could. There's still a little bit of a wobble in it. Now, the next thing that we had to accomplish was to put on this different torque converter. This torque converter is the 40 series, so it needed a jack shaft. Again, the previous one was attached to the engine. And if you look up here, the motor mount, notice the slots, the elongated slots. We can move that forward and back depending on the size of belt that we put on there. And I'm glad I did that because last night, when I went to test this out, we were having some problems. And what I ended up finding out is that on the 40 series, you're supposed to flip the driven this way. And what I had previously was, it was flipped the other way, and it was giving us grief. Well, when we go and flip it this way, this part of the driven right here is running into the oil cap. I don't actually have it touching it, but it would run into it, and we are not able to get a center to center. So what we're going to do is get a longer belt, push this engine forward, and then put on the new belt. Now, I'm going to do this with the new belt, but what I had to do is the center of this shaft and the center of this shaft with this belt were supposed to be 8 3/16 of an inch apart. What I ended up doing was cutting this. It actually goes this way. And from the center here to center here, it's 8 3/16. This is a 3/4 inch hole. This is a 1 inch hole. And I was able to slip that on that shaft and on that one and set these bearings where I needed them to be and welded them on. And now that we have to put a longer belt on, I'm going to have to build another one of those, but we'll just slide the engine forward. We got about 2.5 inches of play in there, so the next belt should slide on just fine. Final update I want to show you is the chain tensioner. I messed it up. I put on this tensioner, and originally it was pulling back. It was the chain wrapped up, over, and around, and it was pulling back, and that created one problem. It took a little bit of the bite off of these teeth, and so what we did is we swapped it around and pushed down against the chain, and it added a lot more bite to this sprocket. What I'm going to have to do now is put in a pivoting rod or something right here that comes down in between here. It'll probably have a plate with a hole in it, and then in between this point and this point I'm going to put a compression spring. I may make this a bolt where I can adjust a nut up and down to adjust how much compression I'm going to apply, but I'm going to tweak it that way and see how well that works. Last night we just locked this down against the chain to tension it, and that was working fine. The only problem again was the torque converter. I had it on backwards, and so we don't know exactly what kind of performance we're going to get out of it yet, but hopefully it'll work out well. Oh, one other thing I forgot. One other change that we made, maybe I didn't forget, but these bearing hangers originally are about 4.5 inches, 4¼ inches tall or something like that. I ended up adding another 4 inches to them to raise the cart further off the ground. The real purpose was to get this sprocket down further away from the jack shaft, because if I wouldn't have done that, this sprocket and that sprocket would have been running right almost next to each other, and we wouldn't have a way to tension the chain. And actually, I like the cart being higher like that now. The overall look and feel of the cart, which you may not be able to capture in this video, is that it just feels beefier. It just feels more correct. Sorry about the mess in the garage. I just whacked my head on a bike hanging from the ceiling. Anyway, it looks more correct, and I like the look of it. So we'll have to get that painted up after we make a couple of tweaks and do another update. Thanks for watching.